Recently, a number of products that were put out under the Aquarium Co-Op brand have been removed from sale because they were failing too often. The real question is that a good thing or a bad thing? Let's talk about it. Hello everyone, this is Bentley. We're going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is product quality, product testing, and just the market of various things when it comes to equipment that are brought out to us hobbyists. I'm going to use Aquarium Co-Op as an example, and whether you love them or hate them, in between, whatever that may be, I think this is a good example of where we can start, and I will have one other example to discuss. The 100-watt heater that they offer, and the 50-watt heater as well. I just happen to have the 100-watt on hand. Here's one that I haven't quite deployed yet. This square guy here was removed from sale. Now, Corey has talked about this publicly, and basically that they have a 5% failure threshold. And when they see things go over 5%, as far as number of units sold, I'm not sure what the full metrics are, because that's not something that at least to my knowledge, has been disclosed. After a certain number of units sold, if they see more than 5% failure, and if it continues, they discuss discontinuation of a product because they just don't want to have the customer dissatisfaction. The fact that they're transparent about this is honestly kind of refreshing. We, as hobbyists, get to know that if a particular product of theirs fails after a certain amount of time, and this includes warranties, right? So they were replacing, via warranty or refund, at least 5% of these heaters. More so, to be precise, because they had a threshold of about 5% is what has been said publicly to my knowledge. If you've heard something different, please let me know in the comments down below. But the fact that when you hit 5% failure rate, that's a problem, obviously. But the fact that they're transparent about those numbers, and whether or not that number is accurate, we will never know. That's just what we're told. And we have to take that Corey's pretty honest, because I don't really feel he isn't. But the question is this a good thing or a bad thing? Where's the problem when we see this? And the same thing happened with the CO2 regulator. This is my backup. I actually have an extra one. And I don't know if this thing's going to work or fail, to be honest, but you can see this also is new in tank. It's basically, or new in box, new in tank. It was getting ready to be deployed on some of the new tanks that I'm setting up in my fish room currently. That's why I had it as a backup. But it similarly has seen more than 5% failure rate, and so it's been discontinued. So that's kind of two products in a row, other than the light that has come out, where we're seeing this from Aquarium Co-Op. So here's where the question, is that a good thing or a bad thing, really matters. And I want to argue both sides of this. Let me argue the bad part first. I know, shock. The bad thing is that this means if you're seeing a 5% failure rate, right? We're talking about 1 in 20 devices, right? 5 in 100. In theory, that means that the level in which these devices are being tested ahead of time, whether that is by the original manufacturer in China, or by the Aquarium Co-Op team for whatever testing they do, and we've seen them do a decent amount of testing, practically beating a light to its absolute limits as example of testing, but we've seen that they do some testing. But at 5%, you should catch this, right? And for me, in my career field, right, I'm a quality assurance engineer, a software test engineer, depending on which title you like more, and what company, because each company calls it different, but I break stuff for a living, right? That's what I do in software. 5% you should almost always catch. You know, it's like the 0.0% are the ones that slip through sometimes, and you don't see them until you get to these massive scales like us at the customer level, or, you know, you can do this in software things, but it's very hard in products to catch something at those minuscule percentages, but 5% you should catch, right? And the question becomes, is the testing being sufficient to catch these things ahead of time so that the customers who are getting one that fails right away or fails very quickly, I had one of mine in this tank here actually fail inside of about 3 months. And then not too long after I received a replacement, and I just heated the room, so I stopped caring about the heater in this one, they discontinued them. For the customers that are running into these failures, and I have seen some people who have had multiple of them in a row off warranty replacement fail, they're really unlucky. or maybe they're pushing it to some boundary that other people were not previously doing. But when you start seeing this level of problem with a product, that you start needing to ask, like, is the testing sufficient or something like that? That's kind of the bad part, where you would say, well, you should have caught this, and why didn't you? Especially the manufacturer in China, because a lot of goods that are manufactured in China and go under like 7 different labels, but they're all made by the same company. And I know this from other industries and talking to a few friends inside the aquarium industry as well. The manufacturers do their own testing, and they have specific thresholds, typically somewhere closer to 2% is the accepted threshold on a majority of products. I'm not sure if that's the same for aquarium products. I haven't dug super deep, just because that requires asking some pointed questions, and a lot of times those people don't want to answer those questions, but that's okay. So, why isn't our testing in either stage, whether it's the co-op team or something else, catching this ahead of time to realize that, like, hey, we have a quality control issue. But what might really happen is when these are initially being built, some of these products, they're usually small-scale prototypes. And they may have 20 or 30 prototypes come over, right? You might have many of them in test. You could have Corey's entire fish room, as an example, being a testing ground, or maybe it's all the employees, whatever the heck it may be. But when it's built at a small scale, there's higher levels of quality control and inspection. And then when it scales up, and now we need to produce 100 units a day, 500 units a day, 1,000 units a day, 10,000 units a day, whatever that number looks like at the Chinese factory, quality control inherently is going to slip. So it could be a matter of, hey, we didn't see this failure rate in the prototypes. We approved the prototypes because we saw basically like 1% or less. Fantastic. But then as it scales up and goes into full manufacture, we start to see these things slip through, because quality control might not be as good at scale as it is when it's very hands-on with a lot of prototypes. So this is where again, it comes down to quality control, quality assurance, our test work, to make sure that we are inspecting and ensuring a certain number is good. And that's where the bad part comes in. But there's a good side to this too. The fact that they are transparent enough to tell us, hey, we're seeing this happen and we need to discontinue it. And let me give you an example. There are a number of heaters out there, or air pumps or whatever, that seem to have built-in designed obsolescence, where they're designed to last just as long as that warranty is and a little bit longer. And then after that, their failure rate jumps astronomically. Well, for a company, that's good, because in theory they can plan, after a year and a half on that 1-year warranty, you're out of warranty and it's likely to fail, so you'll need another one and you'll buy our product again. There are a number of stories about this, but I'll give you one. The old Marineland bio wheels. In the 80s and 90s, these were exceptionally popular filters. And there's a number of other filters that are like this. Some of the Aqua Clears are good examples, where all of the parts were very available. They were relatively modular, so it was easy to replace singular parts in the rare occurrence that a single part failed. But otherwise, they were built like tanks, and you would just buy one, and it would last you forever. You can find people that have some of the old Marineland filters. I have, and as an example, over there on my angelfish tank, a Marineland Magnum Hot. That's the hang on the tank canister filter. Those that are in the know, your grandpas out there, those things are like bulletproof. When you find them used, you buy them, because they're basically unkillable. And they are phenomenal, and they work as a slightly larger hang-on-the-back filter. That thing over there, I've abused it, I've done all sorts of stuff to it, it just refuses to have any problems whatsoever. And for that reason, I love it to death, and I've tried to find more, because they're just so reliable. Marineland at one point, and this is slightly in conspiracy theory level, maybe we need some tinfoil on this bad boy up here, but Marineland realized that they weren't making enough money off the products because people could buy a filter once, set it up, and that thing would basically never die. And on a very rare occasion, they would just need to replace a small, inexpensive part, and they'd be fine. So they changed where it was being manufactured and some of the materials it was manufactured with, And all of a sudden, the quality of it went significantly down. And now you have the modern, whether it's the BioWheel or some of the other Magnum series filters, where often they're considered kind of junky compared to some of the other filters that are on the market. But sometimes they go for a phenomenal sale, and you can get them so cheap they become worth it. But they've just lost that quality, and planned obsolescence, designed obsolescence, seems to be built into them. But if they're failing at any rate, it's not like they're removing them, right? If we were to look at the car industry, even though you were outside of warranty, if you had something fail at a certain percentage, recalls are forced. It's a requirement, right? At least within the United States. You don't have that on fish tank heaters and fish tank filters, CO2 regulators, right? So that's where I think the positives are. At least what Co-op is doing is being transparent and saying, hey, this is going above our failure threshold. We're going to discontinue it. We have a certain number in stock, but realistically, if you have a warranty issue, we're just going to refund you. I think that is noble, honestly, because a lot of companies probably would just keep selling the product. I'll give you an example of one that's on the market right now. The Awaze BioStyle Power Filter. That's Awaze's hang on the back. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was at Keystone Clash, they were doing the aquascaping competition. And a lot of us, whether we were competing or not, were around and we're chatting and we're watching people build their things, or we're moving in and out and we're checking back in. Well, every one of the tanks of the competition was given an Awaze BioStyle hang on the back filter. They look pretty, they're neat, they're interesting. There is like a inherent mechanical engineering flaw with this filter. I spoke to another YouTuber who was there who had one at one point, and he said it was the worst filter he had ever used. As far as it would just fail constantly. We had one in Chattanooga Ed's tank. Shout out to you, Chattanooga Ed. And he did this awesome scape, and we go to fire his filter up, and it just is dead. We're all trying to figure out what's wrong, and said YouTuber comes over and is talking to us, and it was like, oh yeah, I know how to fix this problem. I dealt with this in some of the ones that I was messing with, and it's a really common problem. It happens over and over again. It's an engineering issue. And helped us get his filter running at least to try and clear some of the water and finish the competition, but we were all listening to it, and it was making like not great noises, and it was brand new, it was full of water, did everything correctly, and it's just so poorly designed that it was falling apart basically from the start. From the start. And Awaze has been warned about this, and yet they continue to sell the filter. And out of the number of tanks that are there, for one to fail, that's already actually a relatively significant failure rate. There's like, I think 13 or 14 tanks in the competition and one failed. So you're already close to that 5% number with one in that room. Now think about if you're a retailer, or maybe it's Amazon, whatever, and you're selling potentially hundreds of these things, because Awaze's canister filters have a phenomenal reputation. There's a few problems with certain ones, and like I've explained that in one of my reviews of an Awaze, but Awaze as a company in general is relatively well regarded. So people might assume that the hang on the back filter is similar level of quality to, say, a Biomaster or a Biomaster Thermo, right? And it's not. But it continues to be sold. Now, maybe their failure rates are lower, and just in these couple of instances, it is out of the ordinary. But it seems weird to have it that frequent and someone to just go, yeah, I had a couple of those and I had problems with all of them, right? So having the transparency of like the heater or the CO2 regulator, and at least telling us, hey, we're hitting this problem, we're going to remove them from service. If yours is running, great, but if it does fail within the warranty, let us know and we will refund you. In some regards, there is a massive level of positive to have that level of transparency. But we should also consider that by the nature of Aquarium Co-op being so publicly facing on platforms like YouTube and Instagram and things like that, that they're almost forced to do things like that. Now, do I feel like it is truly forced? No, I think they do that because they feel that's the right thing to do. But that's my opinion. So that's what I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Have you had experience with either of these products? Did you have one that failed on you? Did you get it replaced? Did you just get a refund? I know some people that love the heater, as an example, and are really sad they won't be able to get them anymore. I want to hear from you. Do you think that this is a positive or negative? Is it a negative because we're not seeing enough testing and quality control? Or is it a positive because at least when the problems do get slipped past, we're seeing that transparency and that level of, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're doing. Hopefully you don't encounter an issue, but if you do, let us know, right? I want to know your guys' thoughts on this, because for me, I see both sides of that argument. I see both the positive and the negative, and it makes me think like, well, there's a good and a bad here. The bad is maybe harder to do without like really good professional rigor, but the positives are somewhat unique in that we don't really see anything else in the aquarium industry doing something similar. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, consider giving it a little thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. I do all sorts of stuff, whether it's reviews on equipment, talking about plant tips, talking about rainbow fish especially, because I love rainbow fish. I've got a number of new tanks that I'm getting worked on that'll be set up here soon. You'll get to see some cool stuff. Just lots of stuff coming. The fish room tour coming relatively soon as well. I'm trying to get a lot of B-roll done to make it really, really nice, because I want it to be a very good tour, even though I don't really have that many tanks anymore. So, whatever. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.